away from it, it will pursue you. It's not sufficient to get distance. You have to be able to, at some point, turn around, and confront it. At that point, if you're prepared, you can then have a final separation. And the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim is really the story of the separation between Bnei Yisrael and Mitzrayim. The telling is the end of the story. Right? Many Rishonim ask, if you think about the events that lead up to Yetziat Mitzrayim, they're really very baffling, and they baffled Bnei Yisrael at the time. Namely, that Moshe Rabbeinu comes with this story that will go for 3 days and will come back, and they borrow the clay kesef and the clay zahav and the smalot, as if there's a like, why can't Moshe just go to Paro and say that God said that the time has come for the redemption of the Jewish people, and we're leaving, and go jump in the lake, literally and figuratively, right? But that's not the way it happens. It happens sort of in a roundabout, indirect way, which is why the people don't believe in Moshe until Kriyat Yamsuf. Then it says, "Vayaminu b'Hashem v'Moshe avdo." Until then, the Geula, and this is a very important message in general, the Geula wasn't going the way they planned it to go, because everyone thought that they know how the Geula should go. Okay? And the Geula wasn't going the way they thought it should go. It wasn't going according to their script. It didn't work according to this Agadita and this Medrash and this Makar. It was surprising. So they didn't know what to make of it. The question is, why did it have to happen this way? And we get the sense that there was a need. God could have just come into Mitzrayim and killed all the Mitzrim in Mitzrayim, and we could have walked out of Mitzrayim like a Shabbos afternoon walk after you have the children, right? And that would have been much less stressful. Right? But apparently, what? I don't know, sometimes I think a walk after the children would be stressful, but in a different way. It's nice to have somebody like my age sitting here. Apparently, it was necessary for Moshe Rabbeinu and for God to set up Mitzrayim. You get the sense that there was a need to draw Egypt out of Mitzrayim. That it couldn't happen that God should just wipe out the Egyptians in Egypt and the Bnei Yisrael should be able to leave. The question is, why not? So here I want to call your attention to the Mei HaShiloach. The Mei HaShiloach in Parashat Shmot. I don't remember if I did this piece with you guys this year. I did it.
Not this year.
Okay, that for sure I did it in the past. I don't remember if I did this year. Vayomer Moshe Lama Hareota. Right? Lama Hareota, Lama Zeh Shlachtan. Right? Why this is Moshe speaking very severely towards God. Why did you cause evil upon the people, and why did you send them? Hinei lefi ha'reut hu pele. Ech yatsa mipi Moshe davar kazeh neged Hashem yitbarach. How could Moshe speak to God this way? Ach be'emet Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom haya ohev Yisrael. He spoke out of love for Israel. The kasher shama mipi ha'gvura, when he was informed by God, ki yitzrachu liyot od b'Mitzrayim ad achar hamakot she'avru Mitzrayim. So he said, based on the Midrash, that God had just informed Moshe that the Geula wasn't going to happen immediately, but that there would still be Eser Makot, and that the Jews would have to remain in Mitzrayim to witness the Eser Makot. Az Sha'al, Halo biyadcha b'regeh echad lifdot et Yisrael. You can do it. You know you can do it. So why do we have to do it this way? V'lama yiyu b'Mitzrayim yud beit chodesh. According to the opinion, that was 12 months, that the Makot lasted 12 months. But does Am Yisrael have to remain in Mitzrayim another year, l'r'ot HaMakot, to witness the Makot? What's so bad? What do you think was happening when Mitzrayim were getting the Makot? You guys are too young to remember the first Gulf War. Not everybody is too young to remember the Gulf War. When the first, what? You remember the first Gulf War? But you weren't here. Who was here? You were here. Do you remember? It was Purim when it ended. Okay? Do you remember what happened right before it ended? Every time there was a missile, they got up, the Arabs in the refugee camps in Dahisha, right over here. They got up on the roofs and they cheered, right? So you think that we got up on the roofs and we cheered? That when the Mitzrayim got the Makot? Is that what we did? It's not Jewish. Jews don't behave that way. Although what we did on Purim, on that Purim when it ended, I was in Yerushalayim. I wasn't married yet. I had a whole bunch of guys over. I was the only single guy left. So we have all the married friends that left their wives at home. We all had a tish in my apartment. And 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody said, "Let's go to Dahisha." I didn't go. But they went to Dahisha and they danced in Dahisha on Purim when it was over. But in any case, I don't know if I should go on the thing. But in any case, but that's not what we did in Mitzrayim. We allowed ourselves to do it. We were going for it, but we didn't do it in Mitzrayim. How did we experience the Makot in Mitzrayim? Sheyifchedu mehem, kemo shekatuv in Sefer Devarim, asher yagorta mipneihem. The Jews were terrorized by the Makot in Mitzrayim. Ki be'emet yaru gam Yisrael me'amakot. V'lachein sha'al zot be'akadosh baruch hu. And that's why he asked. He said it's going to be terrifying for the Jews. Now, why is it going to be terrifying for the Jews? Because you know you remember something called the Stockholm syndrome? You know what that is? What? Right. Remember Patty Hearst? No. She was he must have been a billionaire, right? The daughter of an exceedingly wealthy family in the United States, a legendary family, the Hearst family, and she was kidnapped and held for ransom by the Symbionese Liberation Army. Okay? And she disappeared for a while, and then she surfaced in a surveillance video robbing a bank together with her captors. So there's a psychological syndrome called the Stockholm syndromes. I think there was some hostage taken there that is named after that. Different story. Where the captive comes to identify with the captor. It's a defense mechanism. So I identify with you so you can't kill me, right? There's a very powerful identification between the victimizer and the victim. And the Eved identifies with the Adon. At the same time, he hates his Adon, but he also identifies with the Adon. It's very complicated. Bnei Israel are enmeshed in Mitzrayim. And if Mitzrayim are going to suffer makot, if the makah hits the next door neighbor, and you're enmeshed with them, then you're terrified of it because you don't understand why it's attacking them and not attacking you. And every new makah, especially if you go into the midrash that some Jews were also killed in the makot to make sure that only those who were pure enough would leave Egypt, right? But even leaving that midrash aside, right? So it was terrifying for them. Right? Rav Tzadok likes quoting midrash. V'hamayim lahem choma miminam u'mismolam. Remember the midrash? So the pasuk said, that's not a midrash, that's pasuk, that the waters at Kriyat Yamsuf were like walls or pillars on the left and on the right. So Midrash says, "V'hamayim lahem chema miminam u'mismolam." The waters were enraged. The waters didn't want to split. So the waters said, "Halalu avdei avodah zarah, v'halalu avdei avodah zarah." What's the difference? You can't tell the difference between the Egyptians and the Israelites. Right? So the Jews and the Egyptians are almost one organic entity. And that's why the Jews are terrified of the Makot. And that is why they have to be there for the Makot. Ve'er'alo Kadosh Baruch Hu, ki gam bazeh yesh tzorech liYisrael, ki be'emet haya lem liYisrael eize shayachut in Mitzrayim. The Makot, see, everybody thinks that we enjoy Nakama. And maybe we do a little bit. But that's not the story of, let's be honest, but that's not the story of the Makot. The Egyptians in the story of the Makot are styrofoam. They're packaging. Because the Torah doesn't really care about the Egyptians. What the Torah cares about is Am Yisrael. So the Jews need the Makot. Ki be'emet haya lehem Yisrael eze shayachut in Mitzrayim. The Jews were related to Mitzrayim. K'mo shekatuv, lakachat lo goy mikerev goy. Hainu, k'ubar hanishmat mi beten imo, sheyesh lo shayachut im imo. The Jews are like an embryo in the womb of Egypt. B'nei Yisrael, Haru, Vayishritzu, Vayevu, B'ma'od Ba'od. Right? Until there was a birth. And extracting the Jewish people from Mitzrayim was like birthing. Right? And there's a lot of birth imagery in Yetziat Mitzrayim, from the dam on the petach to the going through the water, through the, actually it's shaykh to Parshat Tazria, to the seven Zayin Yimei Tumat Leida, that's Sfirat HaOmer, followed by Ma'amad Har Sinai, the Brit at Sinai. So you have the 7 days of Tumah, followed by the Brit B'Yom HaShmini. Then you have a total of 40 days. Then you have a total of 40 days until the woman can come back to the Mikdash. You have 40 years until Bnei Yisrael come into Eretz Yisrael. Okay, that's a different share which you now have gotten 30 seconds. Okay, so there's a birth that's occurring here, and the birth is a painful separation. Hainu kubar nishmat mi beten imo, sheyesh lo shayachut imo, v'lachein tzruchu gam hein lehitbarer v'lefchod mehem. It was necessary for the Jews to endure the terror of the Makot. V'zeh ha'pachad, why? Is this fear hayam mezakech et libam? Is this fear is what would purify them? Because we have to drive a wedge between Mitzrayim and Yisrael. And if God would have just come in and killed all the Mitzrayim in Mitzrayim, so there was a commercial for cigarettes many years ago saying you can take Salem out of the country, but you can't take the country out of Salem. Remember that? Okay, thank you. You can take Bnei Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, but it's much harder to take Mitzrayim out of Bnei Yisrael. And then, right, that's what it means. It doesn't mean that this Paro would be dead, but the image of Paro would remain with us as a subjugating image. We never would have been freed of Mitzrayim. And that's why it's necessary to have the Makot when we are in Mitzrayim. If you look at the Makot, I'm not going to go through all the Pesukim now, 5 out of the 10 Makot, the theme is separation between Israel and Mitzrayim. Right? V'fleti ben ami u'ben amecha. Right? This is a major theme. In a sense, the Makot are the birth pangs that the mother endures. Mitzrayim is the mother. Right? That the mother endures in order to, that's where the separation begins. Right? Now, to underscore the necessity of this process, and this is where one parsha teaches about the other parsha. What's the last thing that, going back to Bereshit, the end of Parshat Vayetze is the final separation from Lavan, right? Now you have to realize, the separation is final in the sense that until this point, we have Mishpacha and Chutz La'aretz. Whenever, right, when you have to find a wife for Yitzchak, go back to my family.